Hello there and welcome to my Arty Corner here on YouTube. My name's Angela Porter. I'm an artist. I'm particularly inspired by patterns and textures, nature and architecture and medieval manuscripts and all sorts of things. I just look at things and find patterns and textures in all kinds of places. And the other thing I love to do is to share my thought processes, how I draw things, or hints and tips, and show different things you can try, because I was a teacher for 28 years, not an art teacher per se. I did teach art. I was a science teacher, but I also taught art. And I still get a lot of pleasure out of helping people and seeing people grow and to develop and gain the confidence and the belief in themselves. So I hope that's my hope for my channel. This is what I want to be able to do. And so if that's your thing, if that's what you find useful from me, brilliant. But it would be lovely as well if you would subscribe, and thank you to everybody who has. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, it never will. It just means you're following my channel. Why YouTube uses subscribe, I don't know, but it does. On Facebook it's follow, isn't it? I think it is on Instagram and on Twitter. I don't know about the other ones because that's the only social media I use, and it does my head in anyway. So thank you so much for joining me, and thank you too for all who've subscribed, and thank you to all of those of you who've given me shout outs as well. I really do appreciate this so very much. No doubt about it. So with no further ado, I'm going to make a start. And what I've got in front of me here is I've got a piece of moss-coloured Fabriano toned paper. And there are other brands out there. I'm just sharing this with you, just so you know. You can use any paper you like. I'm just using this one because it happens to be in my stash. I like the greeny colour, and it's quite a nice surface to draw on. It's got about 15% cotton fibres in it, and the rest is cellulose. So this is 5 inches by 5 inches, which is just over 12.5 centimetres by 12.5 centimetres. I've used one of my corner notching tools to round the corners because that looks nice. And the only other thing I've done is I have drawn a square in the middle, because what I do today, I want to try to contain within that square so I can work around the edge. And today's video is from a suggestion, a request from Chen Keith, who's a subscriber here, who has asked me to have a look at this particular artist's work and try to deconstruct or show how they do this. Now, I'm not doing a direct copy of their work. I'm going to look at it and use it for inspiration and try to do something similar in my own way and try to explain how this works, because I'm never going to replicate somebody else's work. And this artist is called Angel Draws, and it's Angel_Draws on Instagram. And I will put a link to their Instagram account in the description below so you can take a look. I'll do my best to keep this on my camera, but I'm going to have some of his work up here. Now then, these are very flowy patterns and designs, and I can see what they're doing, but I'm not entirely sure I'm going to be able to exactly replicate it, because I can see they work in, or not even exactly replicate it, but get it close. I can see how they work in layers, and it's very beautiful work as well. It's very finely done with an Micron 01. This is a bit bigger than an 01, which might be a blessing or a curse depending on your point of view. Okay, so let's have a look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from a corner simply because I can here, and I'm going to draw in this kind of shape. It's got sort of a teardrop on a stalk. And then I'm going to start to aura this, and I'm looking because I'm trying to work out how this is done. So I'm just going to start auraing inside this, but only on one side, and I'm going to make sure that I trace the lines round and have them sort of meeting. here. So I am essentially having these lines sort of going around inside this. And this then can all be filled in black. Just pop one more in. I'm scratching around with this extra fine point, and I've got a fine point out there with the same ink in. It'll be fine. I may not do the best of jobs here, but I know I've got a chance afterwards to do things like, tidy things up. So now I'm going to start to add auras around this. And I am going to bring this back here, but I am going to kick it round. So rather than following it underneath, I'm just going to give it that little kick around there. I'll come back to that in a moment. I think I'll do one more that goes all the way around. I am trying my best to keep this as equidistant as I can, but that's not something I necessarily am all that wonderful at. I just feel I need this. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to carry on working on this side for a little bit. Yeah, I think I will, but I'm not going to do complete auras all the way round. So I'm going to do a part of one and then finish it. And then I'll do another one that perhaps connects like this, and perhaps one that's a little bit smaller. In fact, I think I might just fill that in there as well, because it was looking a bit daft, that one I just stuck in there. There we are, it's better. Like this. And then I'm just going to start adding some. So instead of going and adding these as if they finished, in fact I could have done with an extra one here, I'm going to sneak one in there. I'm making these almost like they are joining together a lot more in a straight line, as if they're part of a ribbon. And here I'm just going back up like this. But what I'm going to do is, for these ones, I'm going to start to put another one of these black shapes in. There was a reason, I can tell now, a reason why I put an extra square out there, so that I can do exactly the same thing here. But I'm just going to loop this around. So just a couple of auras here. And I am going to leave these all rough and raggedy there. And I'm just going to have that shadow underneath there. This isn't strictly what's in the drawing, but it's how it's going to work for me. And I'm going to have these lines auraing around like this, as neatly as I can get it. And this is most probably a lesson to Angela. Why don't you do this first before you try it on camera? Oh, I'm a bit of a glutton for punishment, I suppose. And also, my day has been busy. You know, from the time I woke up, I've had to work on a cover for my next colouring book. I've drawn it. It was all inked in. It was the colouring that needed to be done, and today was the deadline for me to get it into them. So I've managed that. So here I'm going to put a little dark area in there. I will come back to that. And I'm going to have this one filled in as well. So it's all done. So that's good, and I've managed to get some other bits and bobs that I needed to do done. So that's why I'm actually filming this. Well, it's about 10 to 4 now in the afternoon. in the UK. So so here I'm starting to add lines here, and I want to make these look like they're disappearing into perhaps this area that could actually become a completely different shape, thinking about it. It's almost like a seedling growing here now. There's nothing to say you can't absorb lines into a pattern in order to make use of things, to alter it that little bit. And that's exactly what I'm doing there. So here I've got the lines starting a little bit apart on the edge of this square, but then I've got them disappearing down into this inky blackness here. Oh right, so I've got another one going on here. This is far too many in comparison to the artwork I've been looking at, but I'm not actually looking at the artwork now. But I will come back to it and use some of the techniques that Angel Draws has done. So this is beginning to look a bit like ruffle or cruffle, which is a Zentangle pattern. That's a circular one, so that surprised me. And perhaps I can just get these altered slightly in shape. So I'm beginning to get lots of twistings and turnings going on here. I want to work on this side here, so I am going to have these go towards this outer square. So I've got quite a big shape here. I'll come back to that afterwards. But here I would love to have this look like we've got some folding. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually drawing along the line for a little bit and then naturally let the line curve away and come back. In Zentangle terms, I'm using tethered auras, but I'm using them in this kind of way where we will have, there's almost like a very beautiful shape coming here in this line. And then at the bottom, what I'm going to do here is I'm still drawing along this, but I'm sort of kicking it out and back on itself, so it looks like these are coming from somewhere else or from a fold in this particular ribbon here. And this line here is what makes it feel like there's a fold almost. This one not quite so much, but I'll do something with this, because I think here what I'd like to do here is perhaps have another one of these dark areas. I'll come back to that in a moment. And with this section here, I am going to do the same thing where these lines look like they're coming out from underneath this, so they're coming from somewhere else. So I'm beginning to start to put layers in this. It's so hard to put into words what I'm doing, and it's especially hard to put in words what's going through my head, because my head isn't thinking in words. So I'm beginning to get some interesting things going on here. I think I'd like to just start to put some of these in. And now I'm starting to have these lines kind of tethered, as if they're getting smaller and smaller here. I'm going to take these ones right down to that corner, so it looks like they've sort of shrunk and shrunk. That's a bit like the tangle pattern. Is it Zinger? It's not Zinger, is it? sprinkle, something like that. It's where you've got the stem with these little, you know, aurid kind of buds on the top. So here I've got this lovely little shape going on there. And here, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take some lines here. That go around and in here. I think that could do with being black. And like this. I regret all of this black here, but it is what it is now, and I'm going to have to leave it as it is. And I'm also going to pop this in. In fact, it may end up with all of this being black here, because I made a mistake, a misstroke. So you go with it, you ink it in as it's kind of meant to be. I could have put some of these lines going inside the loop really, but I didn't think about that. I have to be conscious that where I'm putting a lot of ink down here, that paper will stay wet for a while. This ink doesn't dry instantly, it does take a little while. Okay, so here, what I want to do here is I want to get one of these shapes going on. I think I will aura it, even though it's going to go a little bit outside my pencil box. But I just think that's going to be quite nice. And again, I'm going to do this kind of thing where it looks almost like we're looking down inside a hole or a tube where we can see some of it, but the rest is in dark, dark shadow. Well, that's what I'm attempting to represent, or what it feels like it is to me. Of course, I could put all kinds of things in these black areas, like instead of all black, I could put tippling or whatever, but I'm going to stick with black lines here today. Okay, and then here, I'm going to aura with these kinds of tethered auras. Like this, and I'm going to start to get these to actually meet towards the bottom, because this will create a beautiful fold in this line when I alter what I'm doing here in a moment. I think I might pop another one in like that. And then to have this appearing as if it folds, I can take it from there, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to work from here and put some auras in here as I make a right pig's ear there. And I've got that there then now, and one that will come up that way. So I've got another one of these areas that needs to be filled in black, and I also can see that one of these here would benefit from being filled in black as well. What this reminds me of is the variation of diva dance I've been doing, where I've been putting like full circles, full orbs in, and having lines going up and over that. And it's that kind of feeling that I'm getting here in many ways. So we have a look here. What can we do with that bit? This bit over here. Let's go here. Let's fill this one in and see what I'm going to do here. Oh, what's happened there? Well, I'm going to fill this area in with lines and just fill that last little bit in black. So it looks like we've got these beginning to go over something, doesn't it? And that's where the something is, right on the end there. Okay. So I do want to start to use this as a place for some auras to start to appear. Oh no, those naturally joined up there, didn't they? Okay. So if I put something like that there, then you can see how I'm getting to that kind of feeling that we've got something in the way here of these lines. Oh, that one's gone a bit wayward. So this here would need to be filled in, or I can just put another aura line or two in that sort of meet over here, and then have a small area of blackness. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go back to this one. I find it's really useful when I'm doing things like this. I do dance around a fair amount with the patterns as I'm adding them, or the lines, because sometimes I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do there, but how about if I go here and try this? So what we've got going on here is I'm going to use some of these kinds of things to create an interesting shape. And what I'm trying to do is to have the ends a bit wider than the beginning here. Almost like wings, I suppose, in a way. And now I've reached that outer level, I'm going to start, perhaps do some that gets a little bit smaller. But I'm tethering them onto the line a different way. So instead of going right back to the bottom, I'm having them fold underneath, or look like they're disappearing underneath this particular section here. So we're beginning to get folding and twisting going on here as well. So here I'm reversing it now, where I'm making the ones down this end wider than the ones at the, where I was making them wide before. You can see what I've done, hopefully. Hopefully you can. Okay, this one here now. Got lines going this way, so it'd be quite nice, I think. I'm going to have some auraing going on here. And this aura is sort of going back onto this, so it's disappearing down underneath these particular folds here. But then what I want to do somewhere is just start to change the shape and the direction. And I am going to pop in one of those shapes there and start to work around the other side. And perhaps here. It's beginning to fold things around here as well, and there's going to come a point where I'm going to go all the way over there, and I'm now going to start to create an arch here that is kind of underneath both sides. There we have that going on. Okay, some very strange looking shapes, but I think the outer edges of any universe are particularly weird. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just do, because I can, a little bit of Zentangle weaving going on, because that really always adds a sense of depth and dimension to it. Okay. So I'm having one going this way, and then I want lines going like this as well, but I want that one tucked behind the other, and perhaps even one more there, and then this one to get those lines just to join. And this one here will eventually be, I'm sure, another teardrop shape that will be formed between the two of these overlapping curves, I think. So that would work quite nicely. Now the thing I'm doing that Angel Draws isn't doing in his to a large degree at times is I am joining lines where perhaps there's no need to join them like this. This just feels the right thing for me to do. So I'd encourage you to go and have a look at this person's work, because it is absolutely beautiful. It's so precise as well. And I'm drawing inspiration from theirs, but it's nothing at all like what they've created, I think. But a lot of this reminds me of various Zentangle patterns, but just done in a different way, or put together in a completely different way, because there are elements here that are reminding me of drawing like senna or peppered, or this one's the like the cruffle, I think it's called. So I do want to have perhaps some that still come up and over the top here, but connect back down into that little section as well. And now I'm putting a lot more black areas in, because my work is just not as neat and tidy. Or perhaps it is. Perhaps I'm just not being kind enough to myself. So here, I think it's time to start adding some auras perhaps in here. That one feels that it really does need to go around here. Like that. There's a lovely shape there. Come back to that one because this one is one where I want to have some of these auras that go around the outside that I then fill with black ink. And this one I'm going to do something similar where I'm going to go around so, and then create that little teardrop, that black area. It's almost like these are black holes that are drawing the lines in, you know, bring them close together and forcing them to curve and bend in time and space, which is essentially what black holes do, sort of. My description wasn't very scientific-y. Here I'm just going to have these spraying outwards. But then they start to look as almost as if they're curving over and round. This part here, I actually really like that effect. Here I've got some unusual looking shapes, so I'm just going to go back and I'm going to do the Zentangle thing of let's add some weight to make a bit more sense out of them. This one here, I wish I'd carried on doing more of these loops here because I think it would have benefited from it, but it is what it is now. And we'll see where we go. There's not much left to do now, is there? Okay, so I'm going to do some more ring like this. And just see what happens. That's what happens. Draw those in there as well. And then put a couple in like that, and then I can fill that in with black. So we've got that there. This end one here is just that little bit too wide, so I'm going to start tidying these up and also either splitting them or joining them together as I do this. This one here, I am going to pop some black in here. In diva dance fashion, think of these as sort of like a weird diva dance. This is, it is kind of diva dance, but also not. I know what I should have done. I should have come straight off this line here. But it is what it is now, and I'm very quiet today because I'm concentrating on this. So I'm trying to figure it out. I'm not even looking at the references at the moment. I'm just going with how this seems to feel it wants to work for me. I think it's a case of just trusting the process and seeing what happens, and just doing what the lines feel they want you to do. So this is going to be interesting here because I've got this series of lines here that seem to want to come to a point, but I've got these ones here that almost want to hug it as well. So we'll have huggy lines. And here there's going to be some lines that go up. And I think they need to go like this. Because where you've got a bigger distance between lines, it feels that they're further apart, or it's bigger, so it's closer to you. It seems to bring those areas closer. And where they're closer together and darker, it feels like it's in shadow and further away. So I'm getting some very strange shaped lines happening here, but I'm going with that because that's all part and parcel of this pattern. I don't think this is something you can, well, I think you may have an idea of what you want to do, but ultimately I think we're going to end up with things that are just what they are. I'm going to actually carry this line on just a little bit further because I want to make use of that in a moment, I think. So here I'm just taking these now and starting to join them together at the top. The same here. Just creating this. It's almost like these lines start to hug these spaces where I am going to put some black. So I'm making that area just that little bit smaller. And then I've just popped some of these there because it does look like they're coming out from underneath again. This one's going to be interesting because I am going to make this into a teardrop shape, and I am going to have almost like wings on it to each side, sort of. There, I'm just going to pop a little circle in there just to finish that little bit off. Okay, I've got this one little bit here to do. And that's it. That's that in a square, which is, well, it's 7 centimetres, which is about 2 3/4 inches in the centre there. Now then, I said I was going to do something here because I've got this line coming out. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to create something like this. And I'm going to all the way around this. Now I know this is a Zentangle kind of pattern, but I don't, for the life of me, I don't know what it's called. But at the bottom here, I am going to essentially use Crescent Moon. So it's like a black semicircle here. And I'm just going to put an aura there. And a second one. And then a third one. And that looks like it's underneath. But I want to use this as a way of growing perhaps some more of these out. In a nicely interesting way, perhaps. I don't know. You have to let me know. I don't know what I'm doing. But that just seemed the right thing to do, so that's what I've done. I often work very intuitively, where I don't really know what I'm going to do. I just have an idea that I might like to try these shapes or forms. And at the end of it, sometimes it doesn't even work out like that. But it is just trusting where you put your lines. And just, if you're not sure what to do, either aura, because in Zentangle, aura is always your friend, or just go and work on another area and then come back to it. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding more of these and I am interweaving them, as it were. That one's not a perfect match, but it won't matter too much by the time I've finished. If somebody wants to come back and measure that to the millimetre, they're welcome to. I'm not going to redraw it because, well, that would be silly, really. I just want something here that is just a little bit more open, perhaps a little bit more organic, just to invade the space around the square. Because it is a bit of an invasion of space, isn't it? And here I am, I'm now thinking, oh, do I need to add any shadow to this? Probably. White on this would look absolutely, well, it looks so startlingly white. Oh, I've missed that. Oh, and again. Sheesh. It's okay, it'll work. It'll be fine. Oops. And perhaps I'll just pop one in here. So, Chen Keith, as his subscriber name is here on YouTube, has asked for me to look at things. I don't know if I've successfully done this. I'm sure he'll let me know. Then please don't be afraid to say, could you take a look at this? Because I'd like to see how you do it, or I'm struggling with this particular pattern, or I've seen this, how can you draw it? So don't be afraid to ask me things. I'm likely to say, no, I don't draw people. I'm known to do whimsical animals, monsters, you know, cute and kawaii stuff. I'm okay with things like that. But I'm always open to suggestions. I may act on them, or I may graciously decline to, depending on what these things are. So you can always leave a comment, or on the community tab as well, on a post there, because I do check on these things. On other social media, it can be a bit hit and miss at times, because I forget to check DM inboxes, and Instagram isn't the easiest to do that on when you're on. So I use Instagram mainly on my computer rather than on a phone. But don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing I'll say is, nope, not going to happen. Nope. Actually, that's worked out quite nice. I quite like that. I could actually go around the whole square with those, couldn't I? Okay, what I am going to do is I am going to, against my better judgment, I have got here a paper stump and I've got a graphite pencil. So I am going to start to add just some shadows in places so you can see the folds and the dimension. I just need to clean this up a bit and sharpen it up a bit. So excuse me while I scratch away on some sandpaper for a moment. That's a bit better, and then I'm going to do the other end. So I've got two ends like this, nice and clean. So one for graphite and then one for white chalk. Because the white chalk works really nicely, or the white charcoal works really nicely on this kind of paper. So I've got two ends that are quite sharp actually now, which is fab. So I'm looking for where we'd have shadows, where lines disappear under each other or disappear into blackness. So like here, we've got quite a bit here that's in blackness and here. So if we add some shadow there, it just enhances that feeling that we're looking down into a dip. Here as well, where all of these lines sort of like blend one into another, that also would be a place where we could add some shadow to help to bring that out. And here where we've got an overlap as well, all of these here, they overlap. Interestingly, this line doesn't. So I'm not going to put any shadow on that line. So I've got a fair amount there. I think I might need a bit more just to darken that little bit up under here. Because we've got shadow under shadow, so the shadow under shadow really should be darker, I think. Just in this corner as well. The nice thing about using paper stumps or tortillons is that you often end up with an excess of graphite there, and so you can just make use of them. That is beginning to twist, help to twist and turn. There would be shadow here where these lines are all together. And we don't want to take the shadow all the way along because I want to leave some space for white highlights. And here they're sort of beginning to creep. They're creeping underneath this line. So I want to add some there. And here we've got another one of these places where lots of lines come together. So that's going to be dark and shadowy. But here, I don't know if you can see, here it looks like these are curving under. Here it looks like they're curving under, but these ones underneath are actually coming out from underneath. So I want a little bit of shadow there, but I want a lot more underneath here. All the way along there. So I'm going to add just a little bit of shadow here where they curl over. And I may very well, just looking here and just bringing a hint of graphite into that area there. And then here, I don't want the graphite to go too far, but I really want a strong shadow here. And then they bulges out and then in. So I'll want some shadow where they bulge out and back in again. And here I'm just got enough on my paper stump, I think, just to do that. And here in this area, these seem to disappear under a line. So I am just adding some shadow where these seem to fold in on themselves. Same here. we've got lines appearing from underneath others, so therefore they've got to be underneath, so they need to be in shadow. And here, these are coming out from somewhere, aren't they? From over there. Again, coming out from underneath something, so we'll add some shadow on that one. And just a little bit along the edge and leave the highlight there. Okay, these here are going underneath, so I'll have the shadow on these ones. And these are coming out from here too. Interestingly, these ones aren't disappearing underneath anything, though they are sort of here and they are sort of here. So I am going to put some shadow there and on this side because they look like it's curving over. It's so hard to explain in words. So much easier if you can see what's going on. So here I've got a lot of lines here that seem to be disappearing into some nether region or other. And I've got some lines there that I can make use of in that kind of way. All of these seem to be disappearing here. We've got a lot of lines in all kinds of directions here, actually. So I am just putting some shadow there. Look at them all underneath here as well. So plenty of graphite there, and we are going to blend this out somewhat. As I say, not too far, because you don't want everything graphite grey. We just want enough shadow to help to warp space, as it were. Because warping space, or giving the illusion of warping a surface, of a surface not being flat, is actually one of my favourite things to do. Although graphite isn't necessarily my favourite medium to use to do this, today it seems the right thing to do. And to be honest with you, these ebony pencils from Prismacolor actually aren't, they're blacker than the usual graphite, so they're not so grubby looking. Reverse to ordinary graphite pencils for things like this. Now here it looks like we're going up and down. So in the down areas, that's where I'm going to add some shadow, and along the edge here as well. And when I add some highlight, I'll put highlight in the areas that seem like they're bent upwards. And if I need to, I can always come in with an eraser to erase anything that's a bit heavy-handed or I've gone a bit too far. So here we've got all of these lines disappearing under there. Look at them all going together over here. So I definitely want these ones to be in shadow. The purpose of using a paper stump or a tortillon is to both give a smoother finish to the graphite, to spread it out a little bit, but mainly it's to get it to go into the paper surface so it's less likely to be smudged when you put it into your sketchbook or journal or wherever else you keep these. Again, a little bit there. And here with the crescent moon, I'm going to put shadow on either side. I'm going to put a little bit on either side of these, a little bit on that. And I am going to put shadow where these stick out from underneath the crescent moon, where they overlap. And see, I've got enough graphite on this now that I don't need to pick any more up. There's enough on there to do this, I think. But then I can always pick a little bit up from somewhere where there's plenty of graphite if I need a little bit more. So they're all looking fairly tickety-boo here. this one here could just do with that little bit extra. So that's beginning to look quite tickety-boo. Okay, let's have a look. So a little bit more here along that edge. We'll need some along these edges as well because they're bending over. In here, there's going to be shadow along these. This line doesn't actually go underneath anything, it's on top of everything, so I want to avoid adding shadow there to that. But I am going to add some shadow on the outside of it here, just to set this area that little bit back and just to pick that up a bit. That does work, doesn't it? I didn't do this here, which I'll do now. Lots of graphite here because that really is bending underneath, and we've got an underneath bit there. So nice and strong. There, just a touch. Here we've got them bending. So I'm looking at where the shadow is going to go into towards the dip, but here it looks like they're bending upwards, so I'm not going to add any extra shadow there if I can help it. I'm going to try and keep it in this small region here. I'm going to put some along the edge so that it looks like we've got that highlight. But here there is an area here where these are all folding under. And what's more is this one seems to be above, so I am going to add some extra shadow there just to give that the feeling of it being higher, as it were. Bit of shadow there. I'm going to need some shadow around these parts along here because this is where they will tuck under. Like so. Here, because they are all bending, creasing down, I'm always going to put some along the edge. And this little bit here is where there's some underneath, so really want to keep that crease at the bottom all bent if we can. This is interesting because I've got this shape here and it feels that it's bending down here, so what I might do is just extend the shadow on that and here, perhaps a little bit in the middle where it's bending. This is where there's a lot of lines together. If you look here, this one goes all the way around here, this line doesn't, so this is where I need to start adding the shadow. Just like that. And then we've got this area there just for highlights. This one, shadow either side of this band, but also at the end here, because that looks like there's. It's actually interesting. I'm actually not going to put any shadow on the tips. I'll highlight those and have them almost like they're standing up. And here there's a lot of lines in this little section. Some here, and we've got lines disappearing here as well. So these then would be underneath. These will be, oh look at that one there, all those lines here and here, and more here. We'll put some on the ends as well. But this one is so intense. I think I much prefer adding shadow on toned paper than I do on white paper. I think it works better on toned paper. For me anyway, it doesn't look as, on white it always looks grubby. I know that's my prejudice or my opinion, and you know, if you love it, you do, but I think that it works better, I feel it works better for me on toned paper. Or if I use graphite as shadowing and I put colour on top, translucent colour on top. Okay, nearly done all of this. So I don't think, oh, how long? It's an hour already, gosh, blimey. Okay, so I've got here, I'm looking for where the dips are to put some shadow in the dips, like here and here, so that I've got some of the rises to have some highlights in. Here there's a lot of shadows and a lot of disappearance around the edges, so we're going to get a fair amount of shadow there and in here. And then just two last sections, so I'm going to have, look at that, it's like between that bit there. So I am going to have some shadow here and here, because along here, because that's where these lines are disappearing. And here I've got that between going on. I haven't done a very good job of that. I'm beginning to rush now because I can see the end is nigh. The end of my work is nigh, is what I mean. So I'm just looking here, is that I think I'm going to need just a bit more there. Perhaps a bit more here. How's that looking now? And there's no highlight on this yet. Notice I say yet. Oh. I'm not going to do all of the highlights, but I am going to put some in just so you can see the difference that this makes. And I'm looking for where we're going to have the highest points. So these aren't always going to be sort of like in a straight line. It's looking at where these lines would be in light, as it were, or where the highest point of them is, you know, if you're looking like a hill or a valley, or looking at hills and valleys. I am going to smudge this in. And that means that if I want to finish this off, I'm likely to have to go over all of these black lines, which I most probably actually won't do, because there's an awful lot in this, and this will, and I will mess it up completely, because my ability to trace over my own lines is, I'm not going to say non-existent, but let's just say it's best if I don't. And sometimes I think by darkening, lightening the lines, it almost does look like we've got light reflected, even on, you know, from them as well. So even though they sort of represent really deep shadows in the item, we've got that reflected light or the glow of the light on top of them. So I'll just do a couple more pieces. I'm going to have a quick look to see if there's anywhere that I think would be beneficial for me to walk you through it. Yeah, this is the white end. And with this, I am likely to have to clean the white end up a bit more often because it will pick up graphite and so on. But that really is making... Actually, on the camera, it looks like there's an awful lot of light or haze. It might be what brightness I've got my screen set at and so on, or perhaps I've misdone something. I'll see what I can do when I'm processing or editing this, as it were, putting it together as an upload for you. Now here, can you see how it goes up and over? So this part here is going to be where those highlights are the greatest. And here, this and this, I'm also going to add highlights to. The areas I might come back and add black to are the areas that are supposed to be all black, like these. I can't avoid getting white chalk on them, but I can easily go back and add some some ink to them. So this one here, because it's also, it's right on the top, this particular part, so I'll want to get this all with white in, and I don't want to spread the white out too much because I want to keep it as bright as I can. And here, just a little bit there. If I need it brighter, I can always go brighter. I'm just going to do a little bit more too. I did say I was going to have a look, didn't I, and see if there was anywhere. I bet you're all looking at this going, I hope you show this bit, I hope you do that bit. Okay, let's have a look. It's here is the part that is the awkward thing, is this really weird shapes here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these the highlights, and then these ones too as well up here. I may have gone over the graphite with this in one place because I may have put the shadows wrong in somewhere, but you can do that. There's no harm in doing that whatsoever. So that yeah, have we got folded? Are we folding stuff? I think we're folding stuff. The other thing is these. And I just think that the ends are going to be the brightest. So I'm going to try and keep the white in here. Again, if I go over the black that black area on the end, that's fine. I don't mind filling those back in. It's actually going over the individual lines that would be a pain for me to do. That white just lifts them as well and picks those ends up. And you can look for where there's highlights if you want. You know, like here it bends over, so you'd have a highlight on this one and perhaps put some there. This is sticking up, so there'll be a bit of a highlight there. But hopefully you get the kind of idea what's going on here. And of course I'd put shadows or patterns in between all of these, but that would be something that needs to be done later. So I'm going to call this a day with this here. But while this video is being processed on my computer, then uploaded to YouTube and so on, I'll complete this as it is. I'll add all the white to it, and I'll do my best to take a really nice photo or scan it in so you can see what it looks like with the contrast. And I hope you'll give this a go. Mr. Chen Keith even, Ken Chief. Dear goodness, I hope I've done what you asked for or something similar. And so you can see how you can approach drawing those kinds of designs. The artist Angel Jaws is very graphic and very controlled and very precise and very clear in what they do. I tend to be a lot more intuitive, organic-y, flowy, twisty-turny, but we're all different. So what needs for me to do is to say thank you so much for joining me. I really do hope you've enjoyed this one and that you'll come back and join me again sometime. And if you haven't, please subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. It's the same as follow. So until then, take care and find time to be creative. Ta-ta for now. Bye. Hwyl.